Yo guys, what is going on? It is Invin here, and today what I'm bringing it to you guys is the PTR February release notes, patch 1, and these are the notes from the PTR currently that obviously are going to be into the live game when this update drops later in the February month. And specifically what I'm going to be touching on today is the weapon balancing changes that we've seen with this patch, because there's quite a lot of information, quite a lot of changes that I think actually a lot of people will be pretty happy with, because there's some decent stuff here that we've been waiting on for quite a long time. So before we jump into today's video, if you haven't done so already, please do drop a subscribe down below. Help support my content here on YouTube. I do upload videos every single day, and I would love to have you guys here as part of the channel community. Without further ado, let's jump into this one. So the first thing here you guys will be able to see is the bow. The bow has had fixes to Rain of Arrows, Evade Shot, as well as some other stuff here. So I'm going to go through all of these individually, and it should be basically a quick update video for you. So Rain of Arrows, they fixed an issue where Rain of Arrows could trigger backstabs, obviously increasing the damage. And they've also fixed an issue where Rain of Arrows' bleed duration was not able to be extended by perks and passives that do extend bow/bleed effect duration. So that's now been changed, which makes it more of a dot AoE effect rather than, you know, burst damage with that backstab. So that's a pretty big change to a lot of the ways that would work, but it's working as intended, if you will, now. Evade Shot as well has also been changed, saying the Energizing Evade Shot, which is the item perk. They've fixed an issue where this perk was not triggering if any upgrades were unlocked for Evade Shot. So that's now been fixed. They should work as intended. Fixed an issue that allowed Rain of Arrows, Penetrating Shot, and Poison Shot to be used while encumbered or in deep water. Again, obviously you shouldn't be able to do that, so those have now been fixed. They've fixed an issue that allowed bow light attacks to be activated underwater. Fixed an issue with the bow hip firing that made cancelling windows different than when firing down sights. This normalizes the firing rate between hip firing and firing down sights. So essentially you're going to have less chance to be able to kind of cancel your shots, shoot quicker than you should be, and basically making bow play more predictable, but also way more reliable for those players that actually use the bow, which is a good thing in a lot of ways. Firestaff has also seen some pretty big changes, and after the changes a couple of patches ago where this was actually downgraded, I would say, in quite a lot of ways, we've seen some interesting tweaks here that should make this pretty much a lot better. So we've seen Fireball has had its increase projectile radius from 0.01 to 0.33. So bear in mind it's up 0.32 to make it easier to hit with, so that's really good. And it is now able to critical hit. So again, with the Firestaff tree passives, this means that it can then inflict burning as a result, which I think obviously is a really good thing and can do a lot of additional damage. I'm assuming that means that backstabs, should you be able to get the opportunity for them, will also be able to be a thing with this to guarantee that critical hit. Reheat has fixed an issue where reheat could persist through weapon spots and ability usage. They've updated Flamethrower and Meteor Shower to trigger Reheat's 4-second timer when the ability exits, and fixed an issue that caused the flyout icon for Reheat to incorrectly show as Empower. So again, you should be able to properly see the benefits of that passive now, you know, generally around your gameplay rather than just hoping that it's working. Pillar of Fire, we've seen here, reduced the delay between Pillar of Fire's activation and the spawning of its damage AoE. The Fire Pillar now spawns when the player finishes extending their staff forward. And they've also reduced the Pillar of Fire recovery by 14 frames. So essentially, again, more reliable consistency in the effects there, and also, you know, recovery in line with stuff that we've seen changes to the dodges with, and other things along the same nature there, which should make the gameplay a lot more fluid. Flamethrower has also had increased base movement speed so that the haste buffs have a more notable effect, and new move speed is approximately 2 times faster than the previous speed. Now, I've used this in PvE quite a few times, and it's actually pretty good, especially when you get the crit rates up and stuff, as it is able to do crits. Obviously inflicts burning, and with 2 times speed, that's going to be pretty nuts. So do bear that one in mind. That could be something huge after this update drops. The Accelerating Flamethrower item perk has had an issue fixed where the haste effect from the Accelerating Flamethrower would only trigger off exactly 3 stacks and not 3 or more stacks. So now, again, you're going to get less consistency with that, but it's in line with what it should have been initially. Let It Burn has had an issue fixed where the burn status effect from Fireball, Burnout, and some passive abilities were not triggering the Let It Burn passive, and they've also fixed visual issues with some of the Fire Staff's in the game. So again, pretty much overall a buff to these, a lot more normalization and consistency updates, which makes this weapon much more predictable for its users, and also predictable in terms of PvP to be able to counter it, which again is always a good thing because it means it's more user-friendly in general and is much more in line with some of the other weapons, so great changes. Great Axe then, moving on to that, this has had a swapped the placement of the Frustration passive and the Keen Edge passives. Ability points spent on the Great Axe ability tree will be refunded and require a respec after this update. So again, if you are using the Great Axe and you've got a pretty good build that you like at the moment, make sure to screenshot this before we go into the next build of the game when this drops in February. Otherwise, you will have to try and remember what skills you were or are using right now. Gravity Well, this is the big one. We've seen updated damage area to match the Vortex visuals, reduced Vortex pull to allow players a chance to escape, which is interesting. Pulling force ends just before the Vortex damage occurs to allow players a chance to escape by dodging. I think that's a good thing. Removed unintended damage from the initial pull area and area effect of the Vortex, and updated and clarified the description of this ability. So overall, it is going to be easier to escape those grab wells. I do think that that sits more in line with Maelstrom, which was never really as good as, you know, your grab well. You can still pull people in if they were close, but the grab well, you've got the range of it as well. So it is going to slow players down. It is going to be something people still choose to avoid, but with the ability to kind of dodge out of that, it is going to be way less effective than before, which is going to mean that utility or more utility-based weapons like the Ice Gauntlet is going to step up to that position where the Ice Shower is going to be kind of the main thing people are going to use for CC then, because, you know, Great Axe is decent, but Warhammer and the Ice Gauntlet and such are going to be much better now because of that Gravity Well update. Now, talking about Maelstrom here, we've seen the No Reprieve passive. They've fixed an issue where the cancel window was set too early in this upgrade, resulting in the ability being cancelled out prior to the second spin on the attack. That's good, again, increasing the consistency of the Great Axe's abilities, always a bonus. And then finally here, Enduring Strike, it's reduced the damage reduction provided by this passive from 20 to 12%, so down by 8%, and updated the tooltip to clarify damage reduction occurs while any grit is active and not just the grit provided by heavy attacks. So that's now going to be on all grit attacks, which if you are over 300 strength, that's going to be every attack. Bear in mind, you can now pair this with things like Trenchant Strikes, so that when you're hitting with grit, you do more damage. Obviously, there's counters to that, so that you can get hit for more whilst you are gritted, so bear that in mind. But this passive does reduce that damage by 12%, which fits in line with basically the amount of extra damage players can do, just shy of the extra damage they can do with the new perks there. So again, it's kind of going to be an essential one if you are rolling 300 strength. So I like that in a way. It makes more sense. Hatchet, then we've seen one single change to this, which is fixed an issue where the accumulated power and on-fire passives were not consistently triggering with the hatchets that had perks with alternative damage sources such as dots and chain elements. So that's now going to be, again, more consistency, and that seems to be the general theme throughout these weapons. More consistency, more predictability, and more substantial basis for what these weapons should and shouldn't do, so we can kind of predict that in battles, in PvE, PvP, etc., which is a great move. Ice Gauntlet, then we've seen a few updates here, and again, this is a big one like the Fire Staff and like the Great Axe. We've seen Ice Spikes here, Spiky Reach, adjusted the projectiles fired from this upgrade to reduce the chance that single target is hit with all 4 parts of the attack. So you're less likely to burst damage on one player and more likely to spread that damage out to multiple targets, whether it's players or mobs. Ice Storm, they've fixed an issue where 2 different players had different amounts of modifiers and perks from the Ice Storm ability. They could then stack the damage from it instead of it just being a single instance of damage. For those of you that are unsure on that one, basically when AoE stack in New World, the most recent one to cast is the one that does the damage or the heals. It's the same for both. This was not the case when you had different basically upgrades to the Ice Storm, and you could stack 2 on top of each other, resulting in double, triple, quadruple, whatever damage. Obviously, that's now been fixed. Punishing Storm added clarification on the tooltip to state that it will only increase Ice Storm's damage and not everything else, which was unclear before. Ice Shower, they have fixed the desync issue that could occur when players dodge through Ice Shower. Again, this does happen a lot in wars because of, you know, the server stress that it puts on the actual connection and such, so that's going to be really nice. Along with fixed an issue that causes the Ice Shower's route to fail when players dodge through it. So again, now you are going to see, like I said before, introduction of the Gravwell being less sort of hard stuck CC, this Ice Shower is going to be really important. And then they've also fixed an issue where Ice Shower would not start its cooldown immediately when the first ice patch appeared. Now it will. And you've also seen changes to the Ice Pylon for Pylon Burst, which is an item perk, and that is an increased AoE to 3 meter radius from 1, and added new burst visual effects to show this new radius, which is really cool, and you know, should be a nice little addition to the game there. Life Staff, we have only seen one change with this so far, which is Beacon, and with that it's going to be the Speed of Light upgrade. This is where they have fixed an issue where this upgrade's haste was not applying to the caster if their weapon was sheathed, and haste applied by Speed of Light will now apply to all targets within the AoE and not just the allies who are healed. The tooltip has been updated to reflect this new functionality. That is going to mean that Beacon is extremely important in mutation runs where they're timed, so you can speed up the entire party even if they're full HP. Really good. Also in wars, so you're going to see in PvP environments, whether it's wars or OPR for that matter, you're going to be able to send a small team that stick together in a close-knit group. They're going to be able to speed around the side. Interesting to see how this will work combined with things like haste pots, but this could be something where Beacon becomes a staple of every healer's toolkit, even if they are more of a single target healer. Beacon is looking like it could be good because that's going to be very useful in a lot of situations. Then Musket here, we've seen some big changes too. So the first thing is the Sticky Bomb. Sticky Bomb has fixed an issue where Sticky Bomb's crit damage was not increased when the crit damage numbers would appear. Crits will now deal roughly 273% weapon damage, which is huge. Reduce Sticky Bomb's base damage from 235% weapon damage to 210%, again meaning those crits are going to be ever more important. And they've also fixed an issue where Sticky Bomb had broken and inconsistent transistors upon exiting the throw depending on the actions performed after the throw. This could cause the player to be locked out of other abilities until they moved or switched weapons, so again streamlining those transition periods, which is seemingly the aim of this update. Really good addition. Shooter's Stance, they fixed an issue where firing too quickly after entering Shooter's Stance would not consume a shot, allowing players to bypass the 5-shot limit. They have also fixed an issue where exiting Shooter's Stance would reset stacks of the heightened precision passive. Fixed an issue which could allow players to bypass the animation for Shooter's Stance and fire from a standing position. So all of those, again, streamlining the PvP effects specifically, but also just generally across the game, making the musket more consistent. Stopping Power has then been updated as well. This ability has been reworked and no longer empowers your next shot, but instead fires a special bullet after a short warm-up that knocks back your target if it hits. So it means it's going to give this ability some stagger potential, some knockdown or some knockback potential rather, and also it's now no longer going to empower your next shot, but it does give it some good stagger there, so watch out for that. It is going to be different how that works, especially in PvP. Stopping Power can be fired from ADS or hip fired, so you can now hip fire that as well. And Stopping Power's hit reaction animation changed to much better match the timing that the target is staggered. Ability description has been updated to reflect the new functionality, and the cooldown is increased from 15 to 20 seconds. Overall, I really like that. I think that's a great change. Gives the musket a little bit more CC potential, particularly if you're being chased by someone with, you know, Great Axe, Warhammer, lots of CC coming at you. You've got a little bit of a chance there where you can fire that shot off and have a bit of a chance to escape, which I think does make sense. It has got a lot of damage, so it doesn't want to be too overpowered, but a little stagger there just gives people with the extra skill and the extra accuracy some sort of kind of skill maneuver. I like that. Also, we've seen here Powder Burn and Power Shot. Loaded shots can now be overwritten. Activating one of these abilities to load a shot while the other is already loaded will replace the previously loaded shot with the new shot, so you can't stack them. Fixed an issue where the loaded shots from these abilities were not counting towards the heightened precision passive stacking. Hustle, which is a passive upgrade, fixed an issue where this passive had a shorter duration than intended, while the Back It Up passive was also active. Players can now use consumables whilst reloading. Using consumables in this way will interrupt the reloading, but you are able to hit health pot, regen pot, whatever it may be. And they've also fixed an issue that allowed musket basic attacks to be activated underwater, again, with the bow and the musket, you could attack people underwater. It was a bit of a problem for open world PvP. Both of those things are now remedied, which is fantastic. Next up then, we've seen changes to the Rapier. Notably, Flurry, which has been updated ability description to clarify that Flurry can be cancelled by other abilities as well as by dodging. And also Evade here, which has fixed an issue where seething the Rapier after triggering Evade would result in the player getting a persistent movement speed bug. This one's really big, especially in wars. It was happening a lot because of the haze potion issues. That's gone now, which is great. Spear has seen changes to Sweep, which is refreshing reach. Fixed an issue where refreshing reach would not trigger correctly with Coup de Grace. That now should work. And Javelin here has fixed an issue where swapping weapons while using Javelin could result in a bad animation state. That's now been fixed as well. We've also seen Sword and Shield here. Shield Rush, the hitbox of this ability, has been moved closer to the player to prevent situations where the ability could hit targets that appeared to be out of range. The distance travelled by the rush has been increased to compensate for this loss of range. So you get like a little bit of extra distance, but a little bit less range there with that one. Reverse Stab. You've seen the Tactician. This upgrade will no longer reduce the cooldown of Reverse Stab. It will still reduce the cooldown of other sword abilities when triggered. And Leaping Strike here. Leaping Strike and attacking portions of this ability now have separate properties for their homing and movement in order to improve the overall accuracy based on distance. Adjusted homing for better translation against distant targets, and adjusting homing for more accurate and consistent tracking against closer targets. Again, that one was proving to be a bit of an issue at times, so the fact that that's been made more consistent as well is really good and does bring it in line with some of the other abilities and other weapons across Eternum. Then we have the Void Gauntlet, just one fix here, which is Mending Evasion. They've fixed an issue where this passive would reset your lowest active cooldowns in addition to its listed effects. That now won't happen, so bear that in mind. You may see some longer cooldowns than what you've been used to with the Void Gauntlet. And finally here, then the Warhammer. Armor Breaker here fixed an issue where players could not buffer attack inputs from any of the Warhammer abilities into the Armor Breaker ability. And you've also seen Hardened Steel reduce the damage reduction provided by this passive from 20 to 12%, and updated the tooltip to clarify that the damage reduction occurs while any grit is active and not just the grit provided by heavy attacks. Again, in line with the great attacks now, and again in line with the trenchant crits, and the again counter for that with the brand new perks we saw added last time. So that is going to be really important, and it's going to make sure that the playstyle in PvE is a lot more consistent. And also then you've seen finally Empowering Armor Breaker, which is an item perk. Fixed an issue where this perk was applying to all hits for 5 seconds and not just the initial hit, which of course is the intended effect. So quite a lot to take in there with weapon changes that are upcoming, but I think a lot of these are going to be really important. They're going to improve overall consistency, and I think is a very positive move in the correct direction for New World. It's something that a lot of us have been asking for, a lot more fluidity. And if you haven't seen my other video on the February PTR general notes, there's a lot more consistency in the movement, in dodging, in weapon animations, in movement animations in general, which are going to coincide with these weapon updates to make a very smooth experience for us, or at least a lot smoother than what we are used to, which is absolutely fantastic and something which I am very, very excited to get hands on with when this hits the live servers in New World. So of course, as always guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but that is going to be it for today's video. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your time. If you are new to the channel, please do make sure that you're dropping a subscribe down below, as it is very much appreciated, and make sure you're dropping me a like if you have enjoyed the video, as it helps me and to support my content here on YouTube. And of course the all-powerful algorithm does love it as well, so that would help more people see my videos, which is amazing if you could help me out there. Other than that guys, that is it. So thank you for watching, and I will catch you again tomorrow with a brand new upload. Take care guys, and peace.